us some money!
So it might come as a shock to people who haven't seen my latest and by far most popular videos, but I absolutely love the Owl House. I love the cast, I love the premise, I love the setting, the art direction, the writing, the way it gives the middle finger to those weirdos who only care about lore and nothing else. I just really love the Owl House, a claim that is helped in no small part by the show's main protagonist, Luz Noceta. Luz is one of the most enjoyable main characters I've seen in a kids show in a very long time, and honestly, I think it's worth singing her praises, as I suspect that she's kind of undervalued by the fandom and the viewership at large, for reasons we're going to get to later down the line. First order of business though, we're going to go into what makes Luz such a marvelous main protagonist for the Owl House. Just like Ida, who we talked about last time, Luz's character arc over the season is multifaceted and just packed to the brim with things to love. Across nearly every episode, Luz is juggling one of many things. From her relationship with the other residents of the Owl House, her pursuit in being the first human witch, her developing emotional and social maturity, and the ever-looming shadow hanging over her head about what she's going to tell her mom when she returns to the human world. Now, of the many facets to her character, the emotional growth ones are very important and, like Luz herself, are kind of undervalued. So when we first see Luz, she is in a bit of trouble with her mother and principal for her latest in a long line of eccentric and disruptive episodes. This opening does a remarkable job at establishing Luz's character, an overenthusiastic nerd with her head stuck in the clouds. Like very dense clouds. The kind of clouds that make it hard for her to see that she's practically raining fire down on the people around her. Admittedly, the first episode kind of fumbles with the idea that Luz being sent to summer camp is a punishment for her just being quirky, rather than being actively reckless and destructive. Luckily, that is a problem exclusive to this episode alone, so it causes no lasting damage. Now, the fact remains that Luz was very much in need of a reality check at this point in the show, which makes it all the more ironic that such a reality check comes in the form of the Boiling Isles. See, as Luz becomes situated in the Boiling Isles, she vows to learn witchcraft from Ida. On top of learning magic in a way wholly unique to any witch in the world, Luz's character arc involves learning a series of lessons that are, more or less, different flavors of this line.
This is clearly not the PG fantasy world I always dreamed about.
Yes, the Boiling Isles may be a fantastical world, but it is far from an escapist fantasy for Luz. In fact, in the original pitch for the show, Dana Terrace intended for the setting to be hell. That's right. In an early draft of the Owl House, Luz would have started the show ending up in the forking bad place. Thankfully, there are no circles of torment and penance that Luz must endure on her time in the Boiling Isles, just some stealth lessons in maturity. In Witches Before Wizards, her life as a witch apprentice begins, and she is all ready to live out her self-insert Azura fanfic in real time. When the less than glamorous reality of the world goes against her expectations, however, she stubbornly sticks to her guns and keeps her head in the clouds, until that stubbornness almost gets her, Ida, and King killed. At the end of it all, she learns that she can't just wait around and hope for cool stuff to happen to her like in her stories, marking the first stepping stones she takes up the right path. Alas, she wouldn't be the eccentric, overzealous shut-in that she is without being a little stubborn, so she goes on to relearn different flavors of this lesson a current total of 4 times. Throughout episodes like Conventions, Lost in Language, Adventures in the Elements, and Wing It Like Witches, Luz learns that she cannot just fandom quirk her way through life and that her actions have consequences. What helps her learn these lessons here rather than in the human world is that she has more people she actually cares about and wants to be friends with. Since arriving to the Boiling Isles, her cup has runneth over with new friends and found family. And with a desire to keep those friends comes lessons in emotional and social maturity. Otherwise, she would just drive those people away with her uncontrollable antics. Once Luz has actually met with people she wants to spend time with and grow to care for, she is willing to recognize when her quirks cause problems for them and is willing to put in the work to do good by them. Of course, the point of the Owl House isn't the real world is no fun, you better just grow up and repress everything that makes you special. I mean, hell, one of the lessons Ida drills into Luz's head is to embrace her own individuality. It's just the show treats that lesson with a fair degree of nuance. There's plenty of what makes Luz unique that serves her well. Her inquisitive nature leads to her asking a lot of questions and regularly challenging authority figures to varying degrees of success. Her artistic talent lends itself to her learning glyph magic, and her abundant enthusiasm lends itself to being fiercely loyal to the people she cares about.
Who hurt my babies?
There's nothing in the show saying that Luz has to change everything about herself in order to be a functional human being. She just has to learn not to let her eccentric reliance on escapism be a detriment to other people. Speaking of those other people, we're going to talk about the found family unit in just a minute, but first I want to talk about Luz's relationship with her mom because it is fucking great. They very easily could have made this a case of Luz having a bad home life with an abusive parent given what the show was going for. But they don't do that. They make it very clear that she and her mom really do love each other, even if they don't fully understand each other. Just like Luz herself, the first episode also makes it very clear what kind of character Camellia Noceta is. A loving and attentive mother who probably could use a nap or two. We get a bunch of small cues that tell us that Camellia is a woman who works very hard and is tired as a result. Probably not helped by the fact that Luz herself proves to be quite a handful. That, and the fact that we've gone a whole season with no mention of a father, lends itself to the idea that Camellia is a single parent. So we got a woman who is in the very intensive job of healthcare work who also has to raise a teenager who saw no problem bringing fireworks to school, and she has to do this all by herself. Poor Camellia, I bet she can use another woman around the house. So yeah, a very stressful kind of life, you would think. Thankfully, unlike actually abusive parents, Camellia never makes this Luz's problem. She doesn't yell at Luz, she doesn't make any demeaning or backhanded remarks about her quirks. She just calmly yet firmly tells her what the problem is, Luz's destructive behavior, and what they're going to do to try to fix it. Summer camp. And she is doing everything she can to help the medicine go down for Luz. She is convinced this is what is actually best for Luz and is as sweet as possible to help her daughter become comfortable with the idea. And we see an enchanting Gromfright that Camellia regularly texts Luz to check in and just be sweet and affectionate. So yeah, Camellia Noceta is a good mom. She has to be a good mom, or else the question of what Luz is going to do when she gets back home wouldn't have any weight to it. Recall that never, not once throughout the season, does Luz stop to consider the idea of just saying to hell with the human world and staying in the Boiling Isles forever. No, they make it very clear that she does intend to return at the end of the summer. Why? Because Luz genuinely loves her mother and doesn't want to be away from her forever. If Camellia truly was a bad mom, Luz would see the Owl House as a perfect escape from her, but she doesn't. We see that confronting her mom about all of this is her greatest fear in Enchanting Gromfright, but it's not Camellia herself that terrifies Luz. She openly dreads the idea of coming home because she knows that means she is going to have to fess up, that she'll have to tell her mom that she's been lying to her about where she's been for 3 months. And if Camellia is the loving and attentive parent we see her be throughout the show, she is certainly going to have a reaction to that information. Of course, after Young Blood Old Souls, that when suddenly turned into an if as we see the portal to the human world get exploded. The loss of the portal is treated as a bittersweet occurrence. Sure, it means that the human world is safe from the Emperor, for now, but now Luz is without a clear way home. A home she was dead set on returning to once her 3 months were up. Now she has to figure out exactly how she's going to get home, and if Camellia is even going to believe her when she says where she's been for the past few months. But she is still resolute in her desire to find a way back home somehow. She refuses to let a barrier between dimensions keep her away from her mother. See, this is how you know Camellia is a good mom, because she raised Luz right. Now as for Luz's other family, it's very clear that she loves them all very much too. I've already talked about her relationship with Ida, but it does bear repeating just how sweet the two of them are. It's pretty clear that she got immensely attached to her new witch mom pretty quickly. An adult figure who doesn't look down on her for being weird? Absolutely she is gonna latch onto her. And after seeing Ida succumb to her curse for the first time, Luz only becomes more and more concerned about Ida's health and well-being. And when Ida actually gets Luz into Hexside despite her own personal grievances, she becomes less of a teacher to Luz and more of an actual mother. The way they both care and support each other feeds into an ever-growing familial bond that is borderline indestructible by season's end. She grows so attached to the old witch that it reaches the point where in the penultimate episode, she risks the pain of death to pull off a heist and swipe a magical artifact that could supposedly heal the curse. Then when all that falls through, she goes on to absolutely wrecking shop trying to save Ida from petrification in the next episode, laying waste to guards, challenging Lilith, and even landing a shot on the supposedly omnipotent Emperor. Side note, I just love how fucking powerful and ruthless Luz is in this episode. In other cartoons where the protagonist is expected to just be the better person and always extend a hand to the people who are actively trying to murder them, Luz says fuck that noise and just starts wrecking everyone's shit. You're standing in the way between Luz and someone she cares about? Yeah, nice knowing you. You're gonna die now. Look at this. Look at how she essentially holds this one little gremlin at gunpoint and demands that she free her friends. Bless this child. She is out for blood and she's the best. And of course, we can't forget Luz's favorite little partner in crime, King, who she takes to immediately after laying eyes on him. The way she just showers him with the affection that he pretends not to crave is just utterly adorable and has led to a few good episodes of the two of them bonding. Such episodes are more about King needing to learn how to friend properly than anything else, which interestingly enough puts Luz in the position of having to be the responsible one. An interesting change of pace for Luz's character. It's very nice just seeing these two just be adorable together and seeing King become Luz's shoulder-dwelling sidekick. Now, where have I seen seen that one before. Then there are Willow and Gus, who, let's be honest, mostly exist to offer Luz more character growth while still being entertaining in their own right. I did mention in my Amity video that these two get the short end of the stick most of the time in terms of screen time and development, especially compared to the aforementioned Amity. Even so, they still serve the roles they were intended for, they're fun to have around and are extremely good friends to Luz, who then proceeds to be a good friend to the both of them as well. So between Luz's steady climb in emotional maturity, her ever-growing found family, her insatiable hunger for all things magic, and her personal conflict about eventually going home to Camellia, you have the makings of a great main protagonist. However, as I established, people do seem to undervalue Luz as a character, often finding something else in the show to obsess over. Whether it's Ida, Amity, Lilith, or the Bowling Isles itself, if you were to ask people what their favorite thing about the Owl House is, odds are good that Luz would not be their answer. There are even people who like Basha more than Luz. Fucking Basha! Yes, there are always going to be those people who will like a show or movie for anything other than the main fucking character, but it seems to be especially notable in Luz's case. Why is that? Well, if I could hazard a guess, it's because she's not exactly white. Now, I'm not saying that the Owl House fandom has an active racism problem, but rather that fandom, by and large, tends to have a general racism problem. Whether it's by the creators themselves or their audience, there's always a bad habit of gravitating towards white or light-skinned characters, either with saying that this one character is the best thing since grilled cheese made with garlic bread, or excusing their many misdeeds because white privilege. Or both. A famous example of this is how Star Wars marketed Finn as the hero of the new trilogy, before almost immediately shunting him off to the side in favor of the white nonsense clusterfuck that was Reylo. However, I think another good example of this rests within the latest season of the animated anthology series Infinity Train. Never heard of the Infinity Train? Well, here's the main premise. You go on a train, and you can only get off the train once you figured out how to be a better person. In the latest season, you have two characters named Grace and Simon. These two have a duality where they are presented with evidence of how their living life is wrong and they need to be doing better. Grace, coming to understand the error of her ways, starts to become a better person. Simon, on the other hand, starts doubling down on his bullshit and becomes even worse, a decision that ends up being his downfall. Now, the show makes it quite clear that Simon's demise was his own doing. However, because Simon is a white guy and Grace is a black woman, so many people were going out of their way and saying that what happened to Simon wasn't right, that his many misdeeds weren't his fault, and that Grace is to blame for what happened to him. A sentiment that the show very clearly disproves. This is a very good example of systemic racism in fandom. There is never a shortage of people who are willing to demonize a woman of color in order to prop up their favorite problematic whitey. And the lack of appreciation that Luz is getting really does seem to fall into that category. Of the many characters that most people would consider their favorite over Luz, all of them have significantly fairer skin than her. Sure, the residents of the Bowling Isles aren't human, but racial coding is still very much a thing. Example, Gus and Willow are coded black and Asian respectively, and neither of them have the fandom following that Amity has. The one kid character in Luz's social circle that is remarkably white. A lot of people were very quick to jump onto the Amity love train shortly after her introduction, coming up with theories about her home life, assigning her the role of deuteragonist next to Luz, and even speculating on the idea that these two would end up being a thing, which ended up being true. Speaking of, when it comes to the budding romance between Amity and Luz, the fandom almost exclusively framed it from Amity's perspective and explored how such a thing would affect Amity's development. The idea of exploring Luz's perspective on all this is actually a very recent occurrence with the release of a song called Ordinary. Long story. Before then, it was all about Amity's gay panic, the possible conflicts this would cause with her family, and just a general vehicle for Amity's development. Luz's feelings on the matter barely mattered to most of these people unless it affected Amity directly. Hell, if the show didn't give such hints that Amity was in fact pining for Luz, the fandom might have just gone to ship her with someone else notably fair skinned and rendered Luz even more ignored by the fandom at large. Side note, to all the fans who make those black Amity edits, I love you and you're doing God's work. Keep it up. Now, a lot of people are going to hear this, think I'm accusing them of being racist and just get scared or indignant or both. And that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, if there is a character in the main and supporting cast that you like more than Luz, just ask yourself why. For me, my favorite character is Ida for all the reasons I explained in the last video and my shallow weakness for Mills. But Luz herself is a very close second. I love how she juggles sunny flower child energy with absolute gremlin energy. I love her lessons in maturity, I love her enthusiastically learning more and more magic, I love her relationship with her mother, her witch mother, her friends, and with Amity. I love how she absolutely destroyed the Emperor's forces in the season finale. I just love Luz, and I cannot wait to see how she continues to grow in the next season. I'm also curious as to what her palisman's going to be when she ends up getting a staff. My bet is on a snake. That way, if she loses it, she can just go to the backup snakes. And with that, I feel like I should end this video by addressing something. See, my channel really started to take off when I did videos on the Owl House. It's kind of the reason I was able to monetize my channel even. I'm certainly grateful for that, and I'm grateful for all you guys who took interest in my work. But as it stands right now, barring any sudden surprises, this is probably going to be the last Owl House video on this channel for a while. At least until season 2 rolls around. I'm sure you'd all love me to do videos about King or Willow or Lilith, but the truth is, as much as I love this show, there's only so much of it I can talk about to make a worthwhile video. 19 episodes isn't a whole lot to make perpetual content about. Besides, what I haven't said in these videos, I've said in the podcast I did with Lily and Ginger over on her channel. Go give that a listen if you haven't already. So the next video is going to be a little FAQ about me, and after that, we'll see what happens. I certainly want to keep making content that you guys will enjoy, so I'll keep you posted with any ideas I have. Thanks for understanding.
And this girl is a part of this world.